Finn Finnegan stood at the crossroads of his marriage with Steffy Forrester, trapped in a dilemma that threatened to tear apart everything he had fought for. His life, once filled with certainty and love, had become clouded by the weight of a secret one that he had kept from his wife, Steffy, for far too long. The secret of Luna, the mysterious woman from his past, had haunted him ever since their paths crossed, and now, as their marriage reached a critical point, Finn was torn between confessing the truth and protecting Steffy from the pain he feared it would cause. The pressure was mounting, and the fragile threads of his relationship with Steffy seemed to be unraveling with each passing day. Finn had always prided himself on his honesty and integrity, but this was different. Luna's secret, which had begun as a shadow in the corners of his mind, had grown into a massive weight he could no longer ignore. Steffy, who had stood by him through thick and thin, deserved to know the truth. But every time he thought about telling her, the fear of how it would affect her, their family, and their future together held him back. He had never wanted to cause Steffy any pain, and the thought of her questioning everything they had built together was too much for him to bear. But as the days went by, Finn could no longer deny the toll the secret was taking on him. He could feel the distance growing between him and Steffy, though neither of them had voiced it directly. Their once passionate connection seemed to be fading, replaced by an unspoken tension. Steffy, perceptive as always, began to notice the subtle changes in Finn's behavior, the way he would retreat into himself, the way his eyes would cloud over whenever Luna's name came up. It didn't take long for Steffy to sense that something was off. She had always trusted Finn implicitly, but as she watched him struggle with his own demons, doubt began to creep in. In the month of November, the pressure of keeping the secret reached its peak. Finn's internal battle began to spill over into his relationship with Steffy. He found himself avoiding her, withdrawing from their intimate moments, and making excuses to be elsewhere. Steffy, once a beacon of strength, began to sense a change in Finn's demeanor. Her intuition, honed by years of experience with the Forrester family and the complex dynamics of her own life, told her that there was something Finn wasn't telling her. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but she knew that something was wrong. Steffy confronted Finn one evening, her voice tinged with concern. "Finn, what's going on? You've been distant lately. Is there something you're not telling me?" Her words were soft but firm, a reflection of the love and trust she had in him. But Finn, ever the protector, could not bring himself to share the truth. He couldn't bear the thought of shattering Steffy's perception of him. Instead, he deflected, offering vague reassurances that he was just stressed with work or dealing with personal issues. But Steffy wasn't convinced. Her doubts grew with each passing day. As the days wore on, the tension between them only deepened. Steffy's suspicions began to grow, and she started questioning Finn's actions more openly. Was there someone else? Was Finn hiding something from her? She had seen how deeply his past had affected him, but this seemed different. This wasn't just something that could be brushed aside. Finn's withdrawal was too pronounced, too persistent to ignore. And as the cracks in their marriage began to show, Steffy couldn't help but feel the sting of betrayal, even if Finn hadn't said a word. The turning point came when Steffy accidentally stumbled upon a message on Finn's phone. It wasn't a text, nor was it a voicemail. It was a series of encrypted messages, cryptic and unsettling in their content. They were clearly related to Luna, the name that had been haunting Finn for months. The messages hinted at something much deeper than Finn had let on. Steffy's heart sank as she read the words, her mind racing with questions. What was Finn hiding? Why had he kept this from her? The seeds of doubt, once small and manageable, had now taken root in her mind, threatening to overshadow everything they had built. Steffy confronted Finn again, this time with the evidence in hand. "Finn, I need you to tell me the truth. Who is Luna? And why have you been keeping all of this from me?" Her voice was no longer filled with concern. It was filled with hurt and frustration. She had trusted Finn with her heart, and now she felt betrayed by the very man she had thought would never lie to her. Finn, unable to keep up the facade any longer, finally cracked under the pressure. He told Steffi everything about Luna, about their past, about the secret that had been gnawing at him for so long. He explained the tangled web of lies and deception, the role he had played in Luna's downfall, and the guilt that had haunted him for months. It wasn't just a simple matter of keeping a secret. It was about a past that he had never fully dealt with, a part of himself he had buried deep inside. Steffi listened in stunned silence, her heart breaking as she processed the truth. The revelation shook her to her core. Finn, the man she loved, had been hiding something so monumental from her for so long. She felt betrayed, not just by his actions, but by the fact that he had never trusted her enough to confide in her sooner. The foundation of their marriage, once so solid, now felt shaky and unstable. The silence between them was deafening as Steffi struggled to come to terms with the truth. She had always prided herself on her intuition, her ability to see through the surface and into the heart of things. But this secret had blindsided her. She had never imagined that Finn, the man she had planned to spend the rest of her life with, could keep something so significant from her. The trust they had shared now seemed fragile, like a delicate glass that could shatter at any moment. The tension between them reached a breaking point, and it wasn't long before Steffi demanded space. She needed time to think, to process everything Finn had told her. The weight of his secret was too much for her to bear all at once. She couldn't simply forgive him and move on as though nothing had happened. The betrayal stung too deeply, and the uncertainty of their future together loomed large in her mind. Finn, devastated by the rift he had caused, was left to grapple with the consequences of his actions. He knew he had made a mistake, but he also knew that the road to redemption would be long and difficult. His marriage was hanging by a thread, and he could only hope that Steffi would find it in her heart to forgive him and rebuild the trust they had lost. But as the weeks went by, things only seemed to get worse. Steffi's doubts about Finn grew more pronounced. The hurt was still fresh, and the love they had once shared felt distant, like a memory fading with time. As November wore on, the couple found themselves on the brink of a temporary separation. Steffi needed time to figure out whether she could ever fully trust Finn again, while Finn was left to wrestle with the consequences of his decision to keep the truth from her. But there was more lurking in the shadows. A new secret, even bigger than Luna's, would soon come to light, one that would test their relationship even further. Steffi's worst fears were about to be realized, and the couple would soon find themselves facing a new crisis that could push them over the edge. Would their love survive this devastating revelation? Or would this be the end of Finn and Steffi's tumultuous journey together? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain. The road ahead was fraught with uncertainty, and their future was anything but guaranteed. Lee Finnegan stood at the center of a storm that threatened to unravel everything she had worked for. The woman who had once been the picture of control and poise, the matriarch of the Finnegan family, was now facing intense scrutiny and public backlash. Her decision to save Luna, the woman who had caused so much havoc and harm in the past, had led her down a dark path, one that was now threatening to destroy her reputation and jeopardize her position within the family and beyond. It all started when Lee, driven by a deep-seated belief in redemption and second chances, decided to intervene on Luna's behalf. Despite Luna's criminal past and the damage she had caused, Lee had chosen to help her, believing that everyone deserved a chance to change. This decision, however, had quickly spiraled into a nightmare. Luna's dark past was far from forgotten, and many within the Finnegan family and the larger community were furious with Lee for showing mercy to someone so dangerous. As news of Lee's involvement with Luna spread, the backlash was swift and harsh. The public, her family, and even her closest allies questioned her judgment and her motives. How could someone as intelligent and strong as Lee make such a colossal mistake? The whispers grew louder, the criticisms more biting, and Lee found herself isolated, left to shoulder the weight of a decision that seemed to be unraveling everything she had built. In November, the pressure on Lee intensified. She had hoped that time would heal the wounds caused by her decision to help Luna, but instead, the situation only worsened. The consequences of her actions began to seep into every aspect of her life, from her family relationships to her professional standing. Lee found herself facing an investigation that threatened to strip her of her authority, and her reputation began to crumble under the weight of the scandal. As more and more details of her involvement with Luna came to light, it became clear that Lee had miscalculated in ways she hadn't anticipated. The public, her colleagues, and even some of her closest friends began to question whether Lee was truly the capable, composed leader they had once admired. Was she losing her touch? Was she allowing her personal beliefs to cloud her judgment? The questions mounted, and Lee was left trying to defend a decision she had made with the best of intentions, but that now seemed to have catastrophic consequences. The family dynamic within the Finnegan household also began to fray. Finn, Lee's son, was caught between his love and loyalty to his mother and his frustration over the damage her actions had caused. He had always respected his mother's strength and wisdom, but this decision to save Luna felt like a betrayal of everything they had worked for as a family. He found himself at odds with his mother, struggling to reconcile the woman he had always known with the woman who had made such a controversial choice. As the tension between them grew, Finn began to question whether his mother's decisions were truly in the best interest of the family, or if she was blinded by her desire to fix everything, even when some things were beyond repair. The family's unity, once a source of strength, now seemed to be on the verge of collapse, and Lee's relationship with her son was strained as never before. But it wasn't just the Finnegan family that was affected by Lee's actions. The larger business world also began to take notice. Lee's involvement in the Luna case had put her in the crosshairs of her colleagues and business associates. Her position within the company she had built was now under threat, and the very foundation of her professional life seemed to be crumbling. Whispers of a potential power struggle began to surface, with some of Lee's closest allies questioning whether she was still the right person to lead the company. They wondered if her recent decisions, driven by her personal feelings for Luna, had compromised her ability to make objective, rational choices for the business. The pressure to step down from her position was mounting, and Lee found herself battling not just public opinion, but her own sense of self-worth. Was she still the woman who had built a powerful legacy, or had she allowed one impulsive decision to ruin everything she had worked for? As if all of this wasn't enough, a new player entered the scene, someone from Lee's past who threatened to expose a secret that could shake the very core of the Finnegan family. This mysterious figure, whose arrival was unexpected and unsettling, carried with them a truth that could undo all of Lee's carefully constructed facade. The secret they held was powerful, and its revelation could ruin Lee's reputation once and for all. This individual, who had been a part of Lee's life long before she became the respected woman she was today, had a bone to pick with her. They had been wronged in some way, and now they were prepared to make Lee pay. The timing of their return could not have been worse, and as they threatened to expose this long-buried truth, Lee found herself fighting not just to save her career, but to protect her family's honor and integrity. What was this secret? And why had it remained hidden for so long? Lee's world was crumbling around her. Her family, her career, and her reputation were all at risk. The investigation into her actions, fueled by the public outcry over her decision to save Luna, was intensifying. The whispers of betrayal and incompetence had become shouts, and Lee could no longer hide from the consequences of her choices. As the pressure continued to build, Lee found herself on the defensive, scrambling to salvage what was left of her reputation and keep the wolves at bay. She tried to explain herself, to justify her actions to those who questioned her, but it seemed that no matter what she said, the damage had already been done. In private, Lee struggled with her own sense of guilt and regret. She had acted out of a desire to do the right thing, to give Luna a chance at redemption, but the consequences had been far more severe than she had ever imagined. Now, she was forced to face the harsh reality that sometimes even the best of intentions could lead to disaster. The strain of it all began to take its toll on Lee's health as the constant stress weighed heavily on her. She had always prided herself on being able to handle any challenge, but this was different. This was her legacy at stake, and for the first time in her life, Lee was unsure of whether she could come out of this crisis unscathed. As November wore on, the situation grew increasingly dire. The investigation into Lee's role in the Luna scandal reached new heights, and her family continued to be torn apart by the fallout. Finn's doubts and frustrations with his mother had only deepened, and he began to distance himself further. The rest of the Finnegan family was also affected by the growing tension, unsure of where their loyalties should lie. On one hand, they loved Lee and respected her achievements. On the other, they couldn't ignore the damage she had caused by getting involved with Luna. The family was fractured, and the unity they had once shared seemed impossible to restore. But just when it seemed that Lee had lost everything, a twist in the story emerged. The mysterious figure from her past, who had come to expose the secret that could ruin her, revealed a shocking truth that would change everything. The secret they held, though devastating, could also be the key to Lee's redemption. The revelation threatened to expose a side of Lee's past that she had long buried, but it also had the potential to clear her name and restore her place in the world. Now Lee had to make a choice: expose the truth, risk everything, and possibly lose the little she had left, or continue to hide the secret and face the consequences. The stakes were higher than ever before, and Lee knew that whatever decision she made would change the course of her life and the lives of those around her forever.